He wore no crowns and won no glory, and now his watch has ended. We salute Wayne, England's White Walker, as he decides not to let his international career drag on. Elsewhere in the Premier League's battle for titles, we get a raven about the last round of action before the qualifiers come. Liverpool saw off the Hoff midweek. Sunday, can they stun the Gunners? Will they be outclassing Arsenal? In Man United, will Mourinho's wild horses continue their form after last year's flat season? Or will the Foxes prove a hurdle too far? And City, Sheikh Mansour makes it my Girona, but will Bournemouth give it up for Pep's boys in the same way that Everton didn't on Monday? We'll be talking League Cup, Champions League playoffs, Italy, and looking at your questions in this Totally Football Show. And today on the Totally Football Show, it's hello to James Horncastle.
Hello.
It's Adam Hurrey out of Football Cliches.
Hi.
Hi, Adam. And, oh my word, Mark Schwartzer.
Howdy.
You're looking bright-eyed and bushy-tailed despite your 4 a.m. start to watch the League Cup draw live from China.
No, unfortunately, I missed it. My alarm didn't go off. I did set it,
right,
but for some unknown reason, it didn't work.
I'm sorry about that, Mark. We will talk about this later on. Mark Schwartzer, for anyone who's not aware, 2 World Cup appearances, published author, been at the Bundesliga, Borough legend Fulham, a back-to-back title winner at Chelsea and Leicester. I could go on.
No, hardly really. I'm not really a back-to-back title winner. I was there. I watched. Actually, at Chelsea, I was only there for 6 months, the first 6 months of that season, and I moved to
the
Leicester.
Important ones.
I didn't sit on the bench even one Premier League game, so that doesn't count for me. And at Leicester, yes, I did sit on the bench for 37 out of 38 Premier League games, but didn't make one appearance, so that doesn't count as a title for me either.
All right. Well, what no one can take away from you, Mark, is the fact that you were the first international goalkeeper that Wayne Rooney faced in an international career that ended yesterday, Wednesday, when he said, I'm not doing this anymore.
That's right, and I'm glad you brought that up because it was a very memorable match, not for the fact that Wayne Rooney made his debut, but it's when Australia beat England, of course, at Upton Park, the Bowling Green.
3-1.
It was.
He didn't retire then.
No. I had a taste of it and I wanted to keep going, and unfortunately, I think it was in 2014 we played England again, this time up at the Stadium of Light, and I'd retired by that stage, and we lost 1-0.
Yeah. Well, draw whatever conclusions you will from that. Wayne Rooney, England's all-time record goal scorer, second in caps behind Shilton.
Yeah, which he could if he'd stayed on and played this season, even as a bit part player coming on for the bench. He would have broken that record. So quite the gesture shows he's not. It's not an egotistical. It would have been egotistical of him to continue, I suppose.
I think for a goal scorer to pass the goal scoring landmark is a big thing, and I think we can all forgive him for staying on long enough to do that. I think the appearance, I don't think it would mean that much to him.
It would mean a lot to the nation, though. I mean, first Big Ben, and now this.
It's kind of like holding all the belts in wrestling, though, isn't it? He'd have appearance record, he'd have the goals record, so, you know.
Do you think he stayed on too long?
No, I think it's perfectly timed. Consensus seems to be that he's left at the right time, apparently on his own terms. Southgate apparently offered him a place in the squad for the upcoming games against Malta and whoever. But it seems about right time for me. I think one World Cup would have been one tournament too far. I think that's fairly fair to say. Looking
forward to the whoever clash because they can be tricky opponents. Some interesting articles about the Rooney retirement this week. Rory Smith in the New York Times says, I like this actually, he says, the Wayne Rooney left Everton for Man United all those years ago, the teenage prodigy with the soft voice and the cruiserweights build. There's every reason to be proud 13 years later of the Wayne Rooney who agreed to make the return journey. That's nice. That's all you can really ask is to be, proud of your future self. This from Alan Tyers in The Telegraph is even more special. Other countries will produce better footballers, fitter, slicker, sexier, more cultured footballers. Of course they will. They produce fitter, slicker, sexier, more cultured people. But for better or worse, we are English and Wayne is ours. He is Wayne Rooney and so are we.
We are all Wayne Rooney.
We are all Wayne Rooney. Anyway, he scored his 200th goal, didn't he, in the Premier League on Monday for Everton, and he'll be looking to extend that record is it Saturday when Everton play Chelsea?
It's Sunday.
On Sunday.
It's the first game on Sunday. Yeah.
Is it? Well, we'll talk more about that later on. And what I mentioned is the last round of games before the international break and indeed the end of the transfer window. There's much to be discussed. So we'll be discussing right after Sunday afternoon, Mark Schwartzer, you're going to be at Anfield, and that's because Liverpool are going to be there and they're going to be playing Arsenal.
They are, and that's it's always an interesting game. Last season, I think the last game Liverpool beat Arsenal at home, so there's a bit of a revenge for Arsene Wenger. Obviously, it's only 3 games into the season, but Arsenal having already lost a game, the pressure's slowly starting to mount on Arsene Wenger again.
Just for a change, I'm thinking goals here. The last 8 meetings have averaged almost 4.4 goals a game. And looking at what Liverpool were doing Wednesday night against Hoffenheim, they certainly look up for a bit of goal scoring.
I think this has 4-3 written all over it. It's like Stan Collymore popping out with a late winner. So Arsene Wenger slumped over the advertising hoardings and one for the ages, definitely.
I think this is a very significant game in Arsenal's recent history because in March when they went to play Liverpool, that was the game in which Wenger left out Alexis Sanchez, and that situation has still not been resolved. They lost 3-1 that day. Wenger changed his tactics. For the first time, really, it wasn't the back 3 that we later see, but he went direct. They were just launching long balls. And the only players that I think had more than one pass to Giroud was the goalkeeper who had 6, and the defenders. So they went long, which is not Arsenal. And it meant that they just couldn't control the game at all, couldn't control midfield. And Liverpool were worthy winners in that. And you have to say that Liverpool, in games against the top 6, tend to really come alive. I think they've only lost 1 in Klopp's time at the club against the top 6 at Anfield. That was, strangely enough, against Louis van Gaal's Manchester United when United went there and won 1-0. I think the only challenge really for Liverpool is they've been able to rotate so far this season, going into their Champions League games against Hoffenheim. This time they probably won't. He'll look to play the same team I think he played yesterday, and go for Arsenal. But given the frailties that Arsenal have at the back, I think people have figured out that back 3. We saw Leicester really get at it in the opening night of the season. I think you'd be hard-pressed to back against Liverpool in this game.
All right, especially on the basis of Wednesday's performance, although there is always a danger of a bit of a come-down, but magnificent performance, really, the Mane back heels, the goals.
Absolutely. You look at this front 3 and, we've seen this kind of mild resurgence of the centre-forward elsewhere. Lukaku going to United, Chelsea signing Morata. But Liverpool don't have this kind of spearhead of a centre-forward. They have this kind of interchangeable front 3. Roberto Firmino is ostensibly the central figure, but he moves left, he moves right. And Salah, who kind of waits around for some space to open up. And then you've got Mane, who there was one moment during the second half, he had the ball out on the left-hand side from a standing start, beat the fullback, and he left him for dead. And I thought, I've never seen anything like that before. Maybe only sort of Eden Hazard has that kind of pace right off the blocks. And so for a back 3 like Arsenal's, who are, well, yeah, exactly. So I think they're going to be quite easily outmanoeuvred. But right. But they're interesting to watch.
I mean, the third goal yesterday, Chan's goal, was a magnificent team move. Just again, players that you'd expect to be sort of front 3, but they're picking up all kinds of different positions. Yeah. Really hard for Hoffenheim to deal with. Pulled out of position, and just the runs from Firmino to get to the crossing position.
Was that the goal where Klopp sort of punched the air and shouted, "That's football"?
Yes.
It was. It was. Mark Canary.
I actually think that without Coutinho on the side, I mean, Firmino, I think, has stepped up. He's playing arguably his best football at the club. There's more responsibility on his shoulders, and actually, I think they play better football. I think with Coutinho, it's a bit more predictable because always give Coutinho the ball, let him kind of create something.
He'll have a shot from just outside the penalty box.
That's right, yeah. And only score 6 or 7 a season.
Yeah.
But I think when you look at Mane, Salah, I mean, Salah's brought another dimension to them. He's a different boy now from when he was at Chelsea to now. You can see he's matured. You can see he's a lot more confident. And they've just got pace to burn, which Arsenal are going to really struggle with.
Mark Canary asking, after seeing Mane last night, do you think Barcelona are trying to buy the wrong Liverpool player? I mean, they certainly didn't miss Coutinho. Is that all sorted now? That some word that he's going to release some kind of vaguely passive-aggressive statement about how he's disappointed in Liverpool's approach in the transfer window? Is he going to be back available for Klopp?
I mean, he was supposed to be back available last night, but I think, if anything, this start of the season has shown that he's kind of expendable, that they can win without him.
Right.
And considering that, I found it baffling, as Michael Cox did last week, that they're saying we wouldn't even sell him for 150 million. I don't think he necessarily improves that team. I thought Chan last night was fantastic. Chan was really good.
Yeah, he was in a more advanced role, no?
Yeah.
All right, well, so now you're backing Liverpool big time on this. Adam, similar?
They're going to edge it, the odd goal in 15 probably.
Right, and Mark, you're predicting Arsene Wenger in crisis within days?
I think so, yeah. I think Liverpool will be too strong for him again. I mean, both sides are suspect defensively. Arsenal, I think, just a little bit more. And I think up front, Lacazette doesn't bring enough at the moment, doesn't do enough. He's not a Sanchez. It'd be interesting to see whether Sanchez comes into the side.
As a goalkeeper, if you'd be more worried about a Sanchez hoving into view than a Lacazette, would you?
Probably, yeah. I think I would. I mean, Lacazette, kind of in and around the box, obviously he's at his most dangerous. I think with Sanchez anywhere in the pitch, it's kind of reminiscence a little bit of when Henry was at the club. Giving the ball, let him run at you is actually the worst situation to be at. And then sometimes when he's actually going away with you, with his back to you, is also equally dangerous because you kind of almost take the foot off the throttle a little bit, thinking, all right, we've got him. And then within a split second, he turns and he's gone. And I remember many a times playing against Henry and being in that situation and just leaving us for dead. I mean, we've had some horrendous results against Arsenal when I was at Middlesbrough, 5-1, 6-1. And these were at home. And that was the famous Kanu back heel at one stage as well. And when we scored, actually, most of the Middlesbrough fans had left, and then it was the Arsenal fans who actually who cheered when we scored at home.
Oh, my Lord.
Oh, that was cheering. Nice. Was he the scariest player you ever encountered?
Henry?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. Arguably, because of from any part of the pitch, whenever he got the ball, and you probably wanted him at the edge of the 18-yard box with his back to goal. You didn't want him to have too much space because when he had the space, he just had that turn of speed and those long legs and the ability to keep possession. I mean, the Arsenal side of that time, the Invincibles, and in and around that time were arguably the best team that I think I've ever played against.
Fair enough. Chelsea taking on Everton, Mark, this Sunday. Chelsea owned Everton last season, 5-0 and 3-0, the two results, but it's a different Everton side this time around. Adam, one that you're suggesting a genuine top six contenders. Is that because of what happened against Man City on Monday?
Yeah, top six contenders, but more that they're going to make their presence felt in the top six, not just sort of hover around the edges of it. They're going to add another layer to this showdown fixtures that we have almost every week. So, yeah, they did give a good account of themselves at City, but for Chelsea, this is kind of this crisis, no crisis roller coaster. If they hadn't have beaten Spurs last week, this fixture would have been pretty horrible for them to have to tackle this time around. So, but they did. They wiped the floor with Everton last season. I think the one at Stamford Bridge is probably their best performance under Conte in an attacking sense. The fact that it's not at Goodison is probably good news for Chelsea because it's a horrible place to go and play. So I suspect Chelsea will edge this one. But I don't. The problem with Chelsea is this season there will only ever be 90 minutes away from a crisis.
Right, okay, because Burnley gave them a real problem in week one and indeed took away the win. Is Rooney going to add to his collection of 200 goals?
He hasn't got a remarkable record against Chelsea. Oddly, it's quite similar to Lionel Messi, who scores against everybody else, but it was always sort of struggled against Chelsea. It's
one of the many similarities.
Yeah, it's those anomalies of football.
There are no pictures of him scoring against Man City one year and then again another year, and it's the same fans swearing at him as what happened after this Everton game.
And nice that he actually tweeted back to them. Nice to see a few familiar faces. Was remarkable that. Well, Chelsea looked really impressive against Spurs last weekend with their new setup. Is Conte going to use that again, do you think, here, or was it just for that particular circumstance?
I think it'll be just for that game. I think he'll revert back David Luiz to centre-half. I think at home they'll feel like they'll need some more in midfield to try and attack Everton more. So, I mean, at Wembley against Spurs, they're up against it. They needed to play a bit more cautious. They needed to get a result. That's what Conte wanted. The game couldn't have gone any better for them. Tottenham, as well as they played on the day, the chances they had, hitting the post from Kane, the number of possession they had, Chelsea rode their luck. They did exactly the same thing as they did to them in the League Cup. In the FA Cup semi-final when they beat them. Tottenham had all the chances. And Chelsea were ruthless. And then this time, it was an unlikely source in Marcus Alonso, who would come up and score 2 goals. I mean, his free kick was awesome. And he's run down the left-hand side, and it was a hard hard finish, difficult for a goalkeeper. But I think But I think Lloris just went the wrong way. I think he attempted to save it the wrong way. I think he just needed to throw a leg down or stick a hand down rather than try and get his whole body behind the ball.
Let's talk about Hugo Lloris because I'm confused. Some people this week saying he's really overrated. Squawker pointing out he's made 6 defensive errors. I've no way of checking these facts, but 6 defensive errors in the Premier League since the start of last season. Only Lucas Fabianski has more with 7.
But if you watch Tottenham and the way that they play, he's going to make more mistakes. They always play out at the back, no matter what. No matter who they're playing against, teams are pushed right up high against them. They continuously look to play out at the back, and Lloris is at the heart of that. So he's the one that will make the mistake ultimately.
In terms of distribution?
In distribution. Right. And then also, he plays a high line. He comes off his line. I really like the way he's played. And I've actually learned to like him even more. From before, I used to think, I actually would have to agree with Squawker and think, actually, I didn't think he was as highly rated as everyone was going on about. Having watched him now for over the last 12 months regularly, I've got a lot of admiration for him, and I think he's a very, very good goalkeeper. There's no doubt about it, and particularly when a goalkeeper's more involved like he is, he's going to make more mistakes. But he's a big reason also that they're so strong defensively.
All right, we had David Priest on last Thursday, very much goalkeeper day, on the Totally Football show, and he was saying, I think he said De Gea was his favourite goalkeeper. Who do you think is the best goalkeeper in the Premier League?
Who's my favourite goalkeeper in the Premier League? Oh gosh, Hugo Lloris probably, and Thibaut Courtois. I think
really
the two of them. De Gea. I have this argument, and Man United fans, I think, dislike me profusely for it because I never say that De Gea is the best goalkeeper in the world, because I analyse it in a number of ways, and I look at De Gea and I go, you know what, on his line, he's arguably the best goalkeeper in the world. But what else does he do? He doesn't distribute a lot. He doesn't come off his line. He doesn't take crosses very often. And he doesn't play high up outside his box. He doesn't sweep a lot. Watching him play, and again, I watched Man United play last season a lot. He's often between his 6-yard box and his penalty spot when the ball's up the other end. He's a typical Spanish goalkeeper that likes to stay very deep. So for me, he needs to bring more to his game. He needs to command his box more, and he needs to play a higher line and control that area between his defence and his area in the goal.
All right, so Lloris or Courtois for you are the best?
Definitely.
And who would be the worst in the Premier League?
Oh my.
Just say there's a couple there.
Everyone's going to think, I bet he doesn't answer that.
No, it's
don't
a tough
let us
one.
down, Mark.
No, it's a tough one.
Who could improve? Who could really improve? Who would you look at and think, come on, you can do better than that?
I think there's a number of goalkeepers that can improve. I think we can all improve. I used to think the same thing up until the day I retired. You can improve. Who would I say is the worst goalkeeper in the world? Well, probably you caught me on the spot now. I can't even think of anyone.
Well, it's been a problem position at Man City, hasn't it?
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
What do you think of Ederson?
I'm not convinced. I watched him in the first game. I've only watched him one game, so it's hard to make that judgment on him at the moment. But I watched him at Brighton, and he had very little to do. But what he did do, he didn't do very convincingly.
Right.
Came out for a couple of crosses, collided with his own player, tried he caught a few, but he just looked unconvincing. And then his kicking wasn't great either for a goalkeeper. And then if you watch him run, have you watched him yet?
Oh, well,
have you seen his movement?
No.
He doesn't look like an athlete.
Oh.
Yeah, I was bewildered actually when I saw him, and you see him, he almost shuffles. He doesn't actually really run, so you've got to watch him more closely.
Is that important?
No, not necessarily, but it's just the impression, isn't it?
Right.
It's that body language and the impression. You watch him and you go, does he look like an athlete? And they've paid, 30-odd million for him?
Yeah. He wouldn't be the first goalkeeper who didn't look like an athlete.
Well, yeah, no, but in today's modern game, you'd expect him more to look like an athlete. Name names, come on. Name names. Who didn't look like an athlete?
Neville Southall.
How dare you?
That's an easy target.
That's not fair, is it?
No.
A big target.
No, I'm a big believer in body language. But equally, if you're talking about not running like a footballer, I'd add, David Platt, principally, but also Raheem Sterling doesn't run like a footballer.
No, but he doesn't. He runs like an athlete, doesn't he? He looks like a sprinter. The way his body's shaped, when he's shaped, when you look at him running a straight line, he's incredible. He's quick.
Yeah.
He's powerful.
Okay.
He looks like a sprinter. Whereas Ederson, I'm not sure what he looks like.
I'm going to watch that next time.
Yeah, you should. You really should.
Oh, it's great to have you on, Mark. Ederson's going to be doing his shuffle at Bournemouth this Saturday. 15-1, which, as you were pointing out, Adams, was a game show.
Yeah, probably the greatest game show.
Do you think?
Considered. Yeah.
And why did you like 15-1 so
It was
much?
challenging enough, but didn't make you feel utterly, inadequate. And you felt a sense of achievement. And maybe I only had sort of these sort of weekday lunchtimes to myself more than other people. But
I can't remember that you started
William
with
G.
15.
Stewart, wasn't it?
William G. Stewart.
Yeah.
Do you know, I think that I went to a pilot of that as a contestant.
Right.
Yeah, that's bizarre, isn't it?
How did you get on?
Well, I never made the show. I don't know if I ever. I think it's one of those ones
qualify
where,
for 15-1.
I think the thing is that they had a pool of people, which they got an extra large pool of people in case they needed them, and they just plain didn't need them.
It's not the first pilot you've made which never made it.
That's so very true. That's so very true. But sorry, the reason I mentioned 15-1, City have scored 15 goals to 1 of Bournemouth in the last 4 meetings. Wow, 4 meetings between these two. Is it going to be straightforward like that again? Bournemouth certainly are off to a horrible start this season.
It seems that City like to play away from the Etihad. They had the second best record on the road last season, and contrast that with the 7th best home record. And I think we saw some familiar problems against Everton. Again, I mentioned Ederson, not really because of culpability on the goal, even though the ball went through his legs, but more because that was the first shot that was actually on target, and they conceded, and they kept doing that last season, and they keep doing it now. But yeah, I think it's really interesting what Guardiola's trying to achieve there, because they're playing this kind of back three. I think they're playing it not necessarily because it gives them more kind of solidity, but it allows him to play Aguero and Gabriel Jesus. And for whatever reason, I don't think he trusts Aguero to play up on his own. I think this is having a knock-on effects around the rest of the team, because Sane, who's really came into his own final few months of last season, is kind of having to play out position really in a really kind of difficult role as a left wing back. The goal kind of came from in that area. You had Kompany step out, overcommit, which he occasionally does, and Otamendi just had a bit of a nightmare generally against Calvert-Lewin. So I wonder if he might just go away from this and actually bite the bullet and say, sorry, Sergio, we're going to sit you on the bench and go with one up top or something like that.
Well, as for Eddie Howe, who was admitting after their defeat at home to Watford last weekend that he didn't know how to sort out their problems, what would he draw from Everton's 1-1 draw against Man City? Is there anything there that he can hope for from Jermaine Defoe? Nothing.
No, absolutely not. I mean, Bournemouth, like you said, it's been a terrible, terrible start for them. I think it's more just the way they've played. They haven't played well. They've invested heavily. They've been linked with Demarai Gray, so they look like they're going back in for him again. They've already spent on Ake, 20+ million. Begovic in goals. You could argue and say, with Ake, yes, they've tried to strengthen the back line.
Well, he did well for them last time he was there.
He did. No, I think he did really well for them, and I think he's a good player, and I think he's a good buy. 24 million or 22 million, I'm not sure, but in today's market, probably, and he's only young. But I think they definitely need to strengthen more defensively. I mean, Bournemouth's an interesting one because they always try and play football out of the back, coming up against Manchester City. If they try and play football like they do out of the back, I think it's going to go horribly wrong for them.
Right.
This is the thing about Eddie Howe is, 2 or 3 seasons into the Premier League, he's had this kind of breath of fresh air reputation. Yes, your team play good football, but now they've semi-established themselves in the Premier League. Now we're asking, well, what have you got now? Where did your career go from here? Because he's this career trajectory of his will only lead so far, and so Bournemouth.
He's in a glass ceiling at Bournemouth.
Well, yeah, certainly at Bournemouth, but
he's got a bit of money now as well, so he's spent some money. So it's interesting. Yeah, but it's interesting for a manager who in the past hasn't had a lot of money.
Absolutely.
Now all of a sudden has. How is he going to invest it? How is he going to be successful when he does it?
Yeah, some managers just aren't suited to spending lots of money.
Not used to it.
Yeah.
I think that's more the case.
And this is why he's not playing the guy he signed for free, Jermaine Defoe, who's who hasn't started a game yet. Well, at least in the league, because apparently he's not fit in their opinion. And Defoe says he is fit. Obviously, he's frustrated because he wants to be playing, expected to be playing, wants to go to the World Cup, doesn't see his England career as being over, unlike Wayne Rooney, and it's not really happening, and they need goals.
All right, that's City Bournemouth. Time for a quick break.
Tweet us at The Totally Show and find us on Facebook and at thetotallyfootballshow.com.
Dear Totally Football Show, seriously disappointed to discover from your photo what a podcast looks like behind the scenes. I pictured you sitting around an expensive table loaded with banks of monitors showing live heat maps and optostats from around Europe. This is from Nick Marshall, subject Shattered Illusions. Mark, what do you think of our bijou tablette?
I think it's great.
Yeah.
I think it's a great little venue. I was impressed when I walked in the door. As you mentioned earlier on, it's a little bit noisy out in the restaurant cafe area.
Yeah.
However, it's a very cool place, and the studio I think is very, very cool.
Oh, that's nice.
We could actually charge tickets for people to come and watch the pod.
Like the Tunnel Club.
Because it's got
exactly like the Tunnel Club.
Yes,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
Right, it's because there's a window. Unfortunately for anyone watching, it's not a two-way mirror. But there is a window. You could come, but we're not going to be here next time. We're at Spiritland at the moment.
Yeah. Oh well.
Anyway, this is fascinating, isn't it? Let's move on to Spurs-Burnley, which is also on Sunday. Everything's happening this Sunday. We've talked about Hugo Lloris. We haven't talked about Wembley Hoodoo yet. If they lose this game, there can't be any further questions about whether there is a massive jinx all over Wembley in Spurs.
I just can't see them losing this game. When you look at the way
Do you
they've
remember what happened
played.
last time Burnley came to London?
Yeah, no, but when they're playing them now at Wembley, they've played so well recently. They played very well against Chelsea. They just didn't hit the back. I mean, they didn't score, did they? I mean, Chelsea scored 3 goals and won 2-1. But they were, again, just very unlucky. There's definitely that little bit of a hoodoo for them. I think it's a psychological thing. I mean, Mauricio Pochettino's come out and said that as well. It's not about the stadium. It's nothing else. It's the players. It's in their head. And I think it is a case of that. The positives out of it, I was at that game, is that Tottenham, how they lost that game, they don't know. They've gone in scratching their heads. They can't understand it.
Isn't that a negative? Because it just further fuels this notion in their heads that...
Possibly. But I think, coming up against a so-called lesser opposition, I think they'll win the game.
All right, but if they don't, that's what I'm saying.
Well, if they don't, then...
It's still August as well.
Yeah. Harry Kane hasn't scored in August. That's one of their problems. Who have they got to try and help him? They haven't really, other than, what's his name? Janssen.
Yeah,
and
I think go with they haven't. You obviously got Dele Alli's got goals. Eriksen's got a certain number of goals.
They do. Son didn't start against Chelsea. Whether they bring him in, I thought he actually added something when he came on.
Right.
Pace, trickery.
Right. I'm just saying this is a must-win game for Spurs. To lose this and it's crisis.
The match winner last time around when they played at the Lane was a certain Danny Rose, who obviously I think is now due to have crunch time contract talks with Spurs amid interest from Chelsea and Manchester United. But I think you could really tell at the weekend when they played against Chelsea that they miss Walker and Rose, that tandem, particularly when teams like Chelsea really congest the middle. And on that big pitch at Wembley, where it is wider than White Hart Lane, you can get some width and maybe penetrate through those from there rather than have to go through the middle all the time. So I think they're a bit of a miss at the moment.
A word about Burnley's front line. We talked earlier about Liverpool's sort of unorthodox front three when there's no obvious centre forward. Burnley have all the centre forwards in the country, all in one squad. They've got Johnny Walters, Ashley Barnes, Sam Vokes, and then they've gone and signed Chris Wood. So is that the most bustling front line in football history? I can't think.
How
of
many
them.
would you play at once, Adam?
All of them. Just go 4-2-4.
A bustle of centre forward.
And just isolate every single one of Spurs defenders and just pump it up there. That would be a sight.
They all are really Burnley players, aren't they? The way that Burnley play, that kind of, Sean Dyche knows what he wants in a play. He wants an honest player, hard-working player, and he's got that. I mean, the only thing I'd say is Chris Wood brings a little bit extra. He's got that extra little bit of quality. When I was with him at Leicester for 6 months, he was carrying a a lot of weight. He was coming back from injury. He was struggling to lose it.
For a man called Wood.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey,
Yeah. I'd say more so lumber. It wasn't timber, and it was still lumber. And he's got himself in a shape, and he's scoring goals. Technically, he's very, very good at finishing.
44 goals in 88, 1 every 2 in the Championship, and of course a New Zealand international, so pretty much from where you're from.
Well, I try not to hold that against him. I mean, it's close, but it's not where I'm from.
It's not the same.
No. Come on, let's be honest. That's I mean, that's just like saying you're the same as the Welsh.
Yeah, well, we kind of are.
Well, yeah, I know, but You're not really, are you?
But I mean, I'm European. Do you not consider yourself like Antipodean, a broadly brotherhood of New Zealand and any other islands that you might have down there that I'm not familiar with?
No.
Interesting. Interesting. Can he step up?
Yeah, I think he can.
All right.
I think he can. You know, it's his second chance. He said it. He's been very open about the fact that it's another opportunity for him, and one that he's always aimed to get back in the Premier League, and this is his massive chance.
Right. And it's a big chance for Burnley. Looking forward to that game.
Also, Spurs have signed a player for €44 million.
He's a good defender. He's got pace. He's got strength. He reads the game really well. And I was surprised that some clubs hadn't come in for him.
Right, but can he win at Wembley? That's the question. All right, your last team, Mark, Leicester.
Yep.
Leicester. Can they stop Mourinho's Wild Horses TM? The story so far, 2 4-0 wins, although they were against West Ham and a very weakened Swansea. But it was 4-1 when they played Leicester last season, so we're expecting another big win.
I do, and you refer to the first 2 games against West Ham and against Swansea. Last season they didn't win those games 4-0. You know, they struggled. They lost. They dropped too many points. They didn't score enough goals at home and away. You know, and Lukaku's a massive buy for them. When Lukaku there was talk of him going back to Chelsea, and it looked like odds on he was going there. I actually thought it was the wrong move for him because of the way that Chelsea play. He tried that once before. He hasn't changed his game.
What's wrong with the way Chelsea play? Well,
they need a striker. I mean, you see Morata on the weekend. I thought Morata was poor. I thought he struggled because they needed someone to hold the ball up. Morata couldn't do it. Lukaku's not known for holding the ball up. He doesn't want to hold the ball. He doesn't want to play up his backside. What he wants to do, he wants to play off people's shoulders. He wants to get players in support, making those darting runs in behind the defence because he wants to utilise his strengths. And at United, he can do that. Whereas at Chelsea, they'll have to change the way they play. And they won't do that. I can't see it. And I think Morata's going to have a tough time because of that, because Chelsea won't change. Whereas Lukaku, add Matic to the mix, who's massive for them, takes a bit of pressure off Pogba. I think Man United and Jose Mourinho, of course, has that mix really well.
All right, and Mkhitaryan as well, who's really making this season his own.
They've sort of the spotlight's been taken off Pogba and Mkhitaryan because of the arrivals of Lukaku and Matic. So I think those guys can settle in more now. I mean, Pogba, who's talked about Pogba really? I mean, I think Anthony Martial brought him up the other day in the press saying within the next 4 years he's going to win, World Player of the Year. But other than that, no one's really talking about Pogba because he's just quietly been able to go about his job, whereas now all the focus is on Matic and Lukaku. They're delivering.
You're suggesting you think it's going to be another big Man United win this?
Yeah, I do. I think they will. I mean, I think it's going to be closer in the sense I think there's going to be a lot of goals. I think Leicester are going to score.
Right.
But I think Man United will outscore them. And Man United have a better defence. Leicester at the moment are still... They just haven't got that right yet. They haven't got the mix right like they did in the year that they won the league.
Right. Luis Voce, or Vos possibly, says, is Harry Maguire going to be the saviour of English football?
Yes,
Adam.
Huge fan of the huge Harry Maguire.
Well, he's another one. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
But he's another one that you look at and go, he doesn't look like a footballer.
No, absolutely. The biggest head I've ever seen on a footballer. I mean, obviously it fits his
there are some
body,
big heads around as well.
Yeah. But I mean, obviously your first thought when you look at him is, big lump, probably can defend, throw his body in the way. But we're talking about he's a very kind of adventurous footballer.
Wow, he's quite an elegant footballer as well.
Yeah.
I mean, some of his touches, again, you talk about your first impression on looking at him, and you think, but as a player,
But you were talking about Mane getting free up the wing against Hoffenheim, and you've not seen things like that. Maguire does that too, no?
Yeah, he gets around everywhere. He's almost like he's got a free role. He just doesn't look like a player who would be granted that kind of position. But he's simply because he's so big, he looks like a kind of, I don't know, he's stomping over someone's Sabutio game, and he's sort of striding forward. But he loves a shot. He loves it, and he's in line for an England call-up just because he's a spectacle, and young English centre halves.
They should call people up on the basis of the kind of entertainment factor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Who will he be up against? In terms of Man United's lineup, who will be?
Well, I mean,
patrolling that flank.
Leicester United is a all over the pitch is a good example of where this is a step up in a test for United, because obviously this is a stronger defence. Swansea and West Ham were kind of papier-mâché defences that they had to come up against it. But it's a more dynamic midfield. So, I mean, against Swansea in the first half, United were pretty pedestrian, I thought. I didn't think they didn't move particularly quickly. They didn't have to. So they're up against a much more energetic midfield. And then you've got sort of Vardy and Okazaki, giving them a real test at the back, making them run around. All round, it's not going to be anywhere near a procession, I don't think, as it was in their last 2 games.
Right.
I do still think they'll win.
Okay. Are you still in contact with your old Leicester chums, Mark?
With a couple of them, not all the time, but I do have direct contact with a few of the boys.
Because you lived through, whether or not you were sat on the bench or made it onto the field, you lived through one of the most amazing sports stories ever. Yeah,
no, it was amazing. For just to be part of that whole experience, to have an inside view of it all was amazing. What they accomplished, they'll produce a movie out of it.
Supposedly, yeah.
Are you
going to be in it at all?
No, I don't think so.
Were you at Vardy's party?
I may be one of those people in the background. They go, "Who is that?" And I'm like, "Well, actually, yeah, order of elimination. They're not mentioning him or him. It must be the reserve goalkeeper." It's. What they did, and against all the odds and against all the expectation, against a side, from a team when I first went there in the January the season before, where we're written off, relegated, to turning it around and going on a win of, I think, 8 out of 10 games to the end of the season and finishing comfortably in the Premier League, to following it on. In 18 months, they'd only lost 4 games in the Premier League.
You do seem like a lucky charm, Mark.
Well, I did say, and people did mention it, that if anyone wanted to win the league, they should have signed me after I left Leicester. Even just signed me just to have me on their books, full stop.
In all seriousness, Mark, why did Leicester win that title?
I think time and time again, people underestimated them. I think everybody kept saying that the pressure's going to get too much for them and they're going to fall by the wayside. And didn't matter what result that we just sort of accomplished, people kept putting it down and saying, well, yeah, that was a good performance, a good result, but they're not. Once it comes towards the time of the year where the pressure mounts, and will they stay and will they become, when people start to genuinely see them as title contenders, they'll crumble. And there was not one single game throughout the course of the season where I thought, right, the boys are feeling the pressure. We lost away at Arsenal, virtually the last kick of the game, where Welbeck nodded in a header. And everyone thought this is the game where Leicester's going to fall away. And they didn't. They were clearly disappointed, but they got in after the game, and a lot of the boys just went, hey, it's one loss. Who cares?
But Ranieri was kind of the front of that, wasn't he? Because he did a better job than I've ever seen of kind of playing down their title chances. He was kind of the public face of playing down their title chances.
He did that very, very well. And the other thing he did really well, and it sounds really simple, is he kept it simple. He kept everything the same pretty much. He added little tweaks to the way we trained and little bit of tactical changes, but very minor. So he kept everything the same as the season before. The most notable change was Kante. He was phenomenal. He is a phenomenal player. And he made a massive difference. He brought the best out of Drinkwater, allowed Mahrez and Vardy to really take the limelight. And it's no surprise to me that Chelsea are interested in Drinkwater because of that. He's English, but he's also, he knows Kante, and they play really well together. He has that creativity. Back to your question, is that we also went to Manchester City. And that was the game where everyone actually thought within that change room, right, we can win this league now. When we went to the City ground and won 3-1 and actually played them off the park.
It's just the stupidest thing that ever happened.
It is, and it's phenomenal for the game. I think worldwide. it received worldwide attention, and people talk about it time and time again now. And you talk about different teams around the world, and often Leicester gets brought up in conversation for the simple reason that Leicester did it in the Premier League. Why can't we do it?
Yeah,
I miss Claudio Ranieri now.
Yeah,
and I particularly miss, shortly after his sacking, Jose Mourinho appearing in this press conference with CR, his initials in solidarity on his tracksuit top.
Tracksuit top, yeah. Oh, was there one moment that you'd cite as the most special of that entire season?
Well, for me, it's also very different. Because when you don't play, you have a different view on things. And I particularly never felt really part of it until you play a game. And I never played one single Premier League game that season. But I think for the players, it was probably, the minute, the realisation once you won it. I think that night, that Monday night, when a lot of the boys got together and watched the Chelsea-Tottenham game, the lead up to that game, which I don't entirely agree with how managers came out and, West Brom Pulis came out and said, I'd like Leicester to win before they played against Spurs, and the same with Hazard. He came out and said about he'd rather Leicester won than Tottenham. Not the right thing to do, but it was nice to hear from a Leicester perspective that these guys were in favour of us winning the league. And I think that was the night where, that was the realisation, the final realisation. I mean, everyone thought and everything, but nobody ever talked about it.
Right.
They just thought, right, we just got to keep going, one game at a time. And the manager did that really, really well. His undoing the next season was he tried to tinker.
It's always a mistake to take a winning formula and mess with it. Now, thanks, Mark, for that. We'll have a little bit of a break and then return to the current Premier League season.
Men and ladies of the Totally Football Show, why waste time going to the shop to buy overpriced quadruple-bladed vibrating turbo razors and making the likes of Thierry Henry and Roger Federer even richer by doing so? Instead, head to cornerstone.co.uk/totally and pick up a personally engraved razor and 6 super sharp blades delivered right to your door for just £4. There are no gimmicks with Cornerstone, just a closer, smoother shave than ever before. And it doesn't just work on your face either. I used it on Jimbo's head before we started recording. Head to cornerstone.co.uk/totally to see for yourself. And if you don't love your first Cornerstone shave, they'll give you your money back, no questions asked.
Whew. If you've got anything to say about these games, get it in quickly. So I'm just going to fly by, Adam. I'm going to hurry.
My great-grandparents were Rush as well.
Were they?
Yeah.
Your great-grandparents were called Rush?
Yeah.
And your name is Hurrey?
Correct.
And then, and what would your grandchildren are going to be, what, Shuffle?
Haste.
Not even, probably mild.
Get a move on.
Yeah. Producer Ben's just chipped in, as is his wont, with the news that his grandparents were called, respectively, Fox and Wolf. How about that?
Wow.
Huddersfield taking on Saints. Saints have just signed Lazio's Wesley Hoedt for 15 million. Is he any good, James?
I think he's a bit wooden. He wanted more game time at Lazio. I mean, he's got potential. He's still very young, but he could never really establish himself in the first team. It was only when someone like Stefan De Vrij was out injured that he could come in and basically play for them.
Right. Huddersfield, of course, have had a brilliant start to the season, and Aaron Moy's been a big part of that. Mark, I know you're exhausted after that lengthy Leicester chat we just had, but one of the best Australian players the Premier League's ever seen?
No, but definitely, potentially, not at this stage. I mean, he's played 2 games.
Yeah.
We can't talk about him being the best player. I mean, you look at the likes of Harry Kewell, Tim Cahill, Mark Viduka, Brett Edmonton, Lucas. I mean, we can revel on, let's not forget Stan Lazaridis.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's not. So he's a very talented young
Winston
man.
Reid. Is he?
He can really, yeah, anyway.
So, all right. Well, the Huddersfield, fantastic start to the season. Of course, we've seen this before from newly promoted sides, but we certainly have momentum behind them at John Smith's Stadium. Newcastle, not so much momentum there as they take on West Ham in the sack race derby.
Wagner, incidentally, doesn't believe in momentum.
Does he not?
No.
What, is it kind of Newtonian concept or what?
He said, for example, they didn't have momentum going into the playoffs last year. I mean, they still got there because...
All right.
Yeah. I think they only won like 3 of their last 10 games.
Oh, he's an interesting man, isn't he? Isn't he? Anyway, sack race derby at St James's.
Here's a stat for you. Newcastle have lost their opening 3 games in all competitions for the first time since the 1999-2000 campaign.
All right.
Ruud Gullit. And, well, I think we'll remember some of that sort of dismal evening against Sunderland at home. And he stood in the dugout with a very, very, very angry Shearer behind him. I don't think it's reached those levels of sort of ineptitude just yet. But
well, I don't think you're going to put Shearer on the bench, is he?
No. I don't think he's got anyone decent to drop, actually. But this is kind of like the classico of eternal disillusionment, isn't it? West Ham, Newcastle. I would put Newcastle have just edged ahead in the crisis stakes because West Ham avoided that potential banana skin in the Carabao Cup.
But they're contrasting managers, aren't they? I mean, you look at Benitez claims he hasn't had the money or enough money to buy the players he wants to, whereas Bilic has, and he's brought in all the players he's wanted to bring in. So
and it's made no difference.
And it's, well, no. And you could argue and say it's probably been worse.
Ooh, Newcastle haven't scored yet, but they are going to be up against Joe Hart this time, Mark.
You're a harsh man. You're
I'm just saying,
very harsh man.
Can we investigate this kind of having trouble saving down to his left phenomenon? Which
we did talk about this with David Priest, but it'd be interesting to get Mark's perspective on this.
The goal that he conceded last weekend, the first one against Manchester United. I was very surprised at how easily it went in on his left. Yeah, you're right. For me, it was from a technical perspective, just about as he was hitting the shot, he took a slight step to his right and was moving as he hit the ball, and then therefore, by the time he reacts, the ball's past him in the back of the net almost.
Is that because lots of keepers do that sort of little hop?
Yeah.
Is it something they're trained to do? Is it just pure habit?
It becomes
I do it at five-a-side.
No, some goalkeeping coaches actually train it and encourage it. Others don't. I don't agree with it. I think there is a movement that you have, but as the shot's been taken, you need to set.
Right.
You need to be feet on the ground, because you can imagine if you take a jump as he hits it, that means you're airborne as the ball's been hit. So it takes that time between when you land again, then you recoil and push off, and often the ball's past you before you can even react. So it doesn't make sense. It doesn't actually work.
Interesting. Palace taking on Swansea. This is on Saturday afternoon. Neither team has managed a goal so far. Sam Clucas is on the way to Swansea from Hull, James. Palace are taking on Swansea on Saturday. Neither team has scored so far. Sam Clucas has joined Swansea out of Hull.
Yeah, everyone's abandoning ship at Hull. It's not good.
All right, Swansea won both these last season.
Robertson, Maguire, you reminded of kind of what a serviceable team Hull had there.
Yeah,
all good players.
Of course, they were doing a Huddersfield this time last season, weren't they? As Philippe was mentioning, only on Monday.
With 14 players.
With 14 players. Yes, crazy. That's a game of two teams that already have got lots of work to do. West Brom, meanwhile, the Tony Pulis derby against Stoke on Sunday. Classic Pulis season so far, 2 1-0 wins. They're taking on Stoke, and of course they beat Stoke 1-0 last.
Well, Stoke, aren't they? They're Stoke under Mark Hughes. They're woeful one week, and then they go and beat Arsenal. And then the next 3 or 4 games they're woeful. You would have thought with selling Arnautovic, they'd maybe get a bit more consistency, but it doesn't seem to. With Darren Fletcher in midfield, with Joe Allen, I think it's a really good combination. Yeah. They still need more consistency.
Yeah. Both sides have averaged 31% possession in their 2 games so far. In fact, Stoke against Arsenal had, what was it, less than 23%? Is the ball just going to sit in the centre circle?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? You saw Fletcher, for example, abandon Tony Pulis and go to Stoke this summer. Fletcher, one of the kind of most unheralded, unsung heroes of won the Champions League, won the Premier League 5 times, replaced by Gareth Barry, who was excellent at the weekend. I think I saw one stat, he made more clearances in that game in half an hour than any Premier League player has done so far this season.
I thought you were going to say his whole career going. I mean, when was the last time? Okay, his time at Villa, we would have had to make a lot of clearances, but at City, he wouldn't have.
Yeah, but it's not far away from Ryan Giggs' Premier League appearance.
Wow, okay. So. Of course, Hesse's looking to make things a little bit more exciting for Stoke. Jay Rodriguez moving back into the picture for West Brom, who can be a tremendously exciting player. You got 2 in the Baggies 3-1 win over Accrington in that League Cup, rather. And also this weekend, you got Watford taking on Brighton. The Hornets in the League Cup got knocked out by Bristol City, but Mark, you're making that it doesn't matter.
No, I don't think so for Watford. I think the way they've started the season has been very positive, and Brighton, I fear for them.
All right. Jack Tanner wants to know what impact you think Matty Ryan will have in the Premier League.
It's a massive learning curve for him. I was at the first game against Manchester City, and he made one really good save early in the first half, and then the second goal he conceded. I even spoke to him after the game. He just went, I wasn't expecting it, and I said, as a goalkeeper, expect the unexpected.
Yeah, well, that's top advice.
Yeah, you've always got
to basically watch out for everything.
Yeah, I mean, listen, in that situation where your defender's under pressure, you've got to expect that it can go wrong.
All right.
It can be pushed. Something can happen.
So there's no time off in the Premier League. Moments in the Championship where you might have thought, okay, I can just take a breather because we got the ball back. It can turn. It can
very much turn. And Matty Ryan has got a big learning curve for himself to adjust to, because previously he's played in Belgium and done very well, went to Valencia, struggled at times, and that was also because of the club's turmoil. And the Premier League is, as we all know, the quickest, the most physical. He's not the tallest, and it's going to be a real fight for him.
Right. And also, don't hop. That's the other thing.
Also, Watford don't have a left back anymore.
Oh, do they not?
They just don't have a left back. Holebas, I think they lost him in this League Cup game. He got sent off. So now Paul Marcus has no one. So if I'm Brighton, I'm like, it's Let's go down.
Overload that.
But they need someone to go forward, Brighton. They just don't. I mean, they've signed the new boy, haven't they, from Bruges?
Yeah, Izquierdo.
Yeah, the Colombian. So he's a winger. He's got more. He gives them a bit more of an attacking option.
Well, interesting to see how that one plays out then. We'll be back on Monday, of course, to discuss it all. A quick little pause, and then we're back to do other things. Oh, Aston Villa have been in touch. Leroy Rossini, you may recall, suggesting that John Terry has 3 days a week in Chelsea's ice bath still, and Villa got in touch to say that that is most assuredly not the case, as he has a very, very heavy schedule with Villa, and certainly not any different to any other villain. So glad to clear that one up. Adam, as you've got football cliches on, asked Dan Wickens, what are the panel's favourite and least favourite football cliches?
I could go into a lengthy discussion about the concept of, if anything, hitting the ball almost too well.
Yeah.
People say it, but no one actually understands what it means. And but it's, in that sense, it's the classic football cliche, because we say it a lot, but no one is ever forced to explain it.
Isn't it about the fact that you introduce an X factor when you don't do something the way that somebody's expecting you to do it, and that's what catches the keeper out?
Well, no. A shot that's hit almost too well is one that doesn't go in. It isn't a goal. It sort of flies directly over the bar in this sort of beautiful trajectory. So the implication is that the purchase has just been, the connection has just been too nice,
too sweet,
and so you should have mishit it instead.
All right, Adam, I have to say your book was amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, football cliches. Yeah, have you got another one out?
No,
because I saw something that said something like more. Or is there an updated version?
It was
cover?
It was the North American edition. So they probably just changed football to soccer all the way through or something like that. I don't know.
Oh, brilliant! Okay, excellent. As well, it's a very funny book, and you learn things more. Yep. Have you read it?
No, I haven't. No,
all right, well, no. I have, and I don't read books.
I haven't watched any of your games either. So.
No, it's fine.
And as we'll discover later, you never watch Serie A, but more of that shortly. Who had the hardest shot in the game? Asked Nick Kinn.
Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank.
Really?
Yeah, he had a proper hit on him. Yeah.
We had David Priest in last week, and he was saying that walls, certainly once the free kicks a certain distance away, are completely unnecessary, and if anything, a hindrance. What do you think about that? And what would your manager think if you did get rid of the wall?
No, I disagree. I don't think they are a hindrance. I think for a goalkeeper, they're a little bit more of a safety mechanism in the sense that they cover a certain aspect of the goal.
Right.
So it gives you that little bit more of a leeway to maybe adjust yourself so far so that you go, okay, right, that part of the goal is covered, at least part of it.
Yeah.
And therefore you can take up more of an aggressive stance.
Priest's counter-argument, as far as I understand it, is that once the free kick is far enough away, you can actually have more chance of saving it if you can see the ball all the way in, as opposed to having it emerge from behind your wall at the last minute.
Yeah, but if it's far enough away, it's not going to emerge from behind the goal last minute.
No?
Is it?
I don't know.
No, because it's far enough away.
Way out my depth.
That you take it. Why would you take a wall out? If it's far enough away, therefore there's enough room for the ball to go over and you just see it pretty much the whole way. If the wall's closer and the free kick's closer, I get that theory in the sense that the ball can go over the wall, around the wall, under whatever, and you've got less time to see it. But the further away is you actually got more time, haven't you? So it sort of counters what he's saying there.
Yeah, David, Mark's won the Premier League twice. So, which current Premier League defence would you most like to play behind, says Henry Clare?
Tottenham.
Really?
Yeah, Spurs. I think they've got a very... I mean, okay, there's question marks now. Rose, Walker's gone, Trippier...
You have a lot of running to do.
Yeah, you do. I mean, that's the game, though, isn't it? That's the modern game. And that was the biggest challenge for me. The biggest difference from playing at, Middlesbrough, Fulham, going to Chelsea and playing behind a back line that played a really high line. And I mentioned earlier on about controlling that space. I was taught, right, you're not at Fulham anymore, you're not at Middlesbrough anymore, no disrespect to them, is that we've got the ball most of the time.
Yeah.
So we take more an attacking position. So we need to play higher up the field. You need to be controlling that space between your defenders and the 18-yard box effectively, because generally goalkeepers control the 18-yard box, blah, blah, blah. So that was a different thing for me. And then even the closer the ball came and the defenders were dropping, you still needed to be on your front foot to be able to control that area, so that any little balls in behind, they expected the goalkeeper to come out.
We've had some letters on our letter page Oliver McManus talking about the number of bald goalkeepers and the fact that the United States win more when they have a bald goalkeeper. Shame that your career ended just at the point at which you were entering that sweet zone, Mark.
Now, if you'd seen me earlier on in my career, right? If you'd known me since I was like 19 years old, I've had the same hairline then.
Okay, right.
So, yeah, no.
I'm just being cheeky. Sorry.
No, I agree. No, it's fine.
Nick Hobbs says that interesting West Country derby on Saturday between Forest Green and Yeovil. The home side won another contest during that as Reece Brown managed to score for Forest Green while Reece Brown couldn't find the net for Yeovil. You kind of need to see them. They're spelled differently.
Spelled differently, right.
Same name. That was after we talked about Carl Walker and Carl Walker Peters and John Collins, John, and that. Bad news from Stephen Endersby, who says, I'm afraid there's nothing former about Boyzone because they're playing Hastings this Friday. Still time to get tickets if you fancy it, I believe. They're at the Pier.
All of them together are.
I don't know if it's some like boy band.
Well, it's like Take That, isn't it? I mean, it's not Take That, really, is it?
Is it not?
No.
Take That is still Take That.
There's two of them not in there. I mean, Robin Williams hasn't been there for a long, long time. And then there's still, I think the other guy, I can't remember
William
the other
Orange,
guy.
is it?
One of the
Jason
guys.
Orange.
Yeah.
William Orange.
As left.
Oh, William. All right, okay.
So,
Dr. Mark Sloan, will an English club go all the way in the Champions League this season? James?
No.
We flew through all of that, which gives me time to say hooray for the Champions League playoff winners, who included alongside Liverpool, Maribor, Olympiacos, Sevilla.
Karabakh.
I'm getting to them. Sevilla, Cesca, who had yet another clean sheet for Akin Faith, Sporting, who had a massive 5-1 win against Steaua Bucharest.
The club formerly known as Steaua Bucharest.
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
And Apple, I'm not sure which Apple. Which Apple? Is it Apple Nicosia?
I think so.
Yeah, and we'll discover when the groups are announced in the draw this Thursday evening. Everybody trying to avoid Karabakh in that. Celtic also going through. They had a bit of a scare away at Astana. Karabakh, of course, the first Azerbaijani side. So there'll be some travelling there for somebody. And Napoli repeated their 2-0 success from their first leg against Nice. Looking very impressive, weren't they, Napoli?
Yeah, it could be this season's Monaco in the Champions League.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
We've bigged them up before in the Champions League. Last season they looked terrific and then suddenly lost it.
Well, they did play against the champions, Real Madrid. They did go ahead against them at the Bernabeu and at the San Paulo. So, yeah, tough ask.
Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, yeah, that's fair enough. What was Balotelli doing? Do you remember Napoli's first goal? Nice were in 10 men because Balotelli was off the field discussing with the fourth official.
About his jewellery.
Yeah.
That he was he'd covered up but shouldn't have been wearing. And, got quite... Lucien Favre wasn't very happy with him, to say the least. So it was like playing with 10 men, not just that moment, but throughout the entire game. Should have subbed him earlier. It would be good if he could run every now and again. Yeah. So.
what is it with players who want to be different like that? Like, as a rule, just take your jewellery off. No, seriously. What is that?
I don't know, Mark. I don't know. Now, also coming up today is a special chat about Italy. Yes, Adam. And it's one that we actually recorded before you even got here, Mark. So after this, not much Mark Schwartzer, but plenty of myself, James and Adam, discussing the upcoming Serie A season on the basis of 90 minutes played so far. But Mark, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been a real treat.
Thank you. No, it's a pleasure.
Well, anytime you want to find your way back in from Cobham,
no problems.
You stayed down in the kind of Chelsea kind of bubble.
Yeah, I've
diaspora.
lived there ever since I moved down from Middlesbrough, like 2008. Played for Fulham and then Chelsea. I'd always stayed in the area, so I live not in Cobham itself, but close.
Brilliant. All right, well, lovely to see you.
Thank you.
And what's your Twitter?
I'm not on Twitter. No, I'm on Instagram.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Schwartzer.mark.
So Schwartzer23 is not you?
Nope. I had a sneaky suspicion it wasn't him.
No, I'm not on Instagram. Oh, sorry, I'm not on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, that's it.
Okay.
So I'm going to take a little picture before we go.
Yeah, for sure.
Instagram
all right, well, we'll do that. But anyway, for the rest of us, after this, Serie A. Adam, you watch much Serie A these days?
Not a great deal, I have to say. But I am intrigued by Milan's spending spree because
when was the last time you watched?
Well, I'm guessing around sort of 1998.
Really?
Because for me, Serie A was wonderful in the 90s. That's generally accepted. Unfortunately, for someone who used to play football on a Sunday afternoon, it was very inconveniently scheduled because I used to just fall asleep during the first
I thought you were a player in the Italian.
No, absolutely not.
No.
That one of my childhood dreams, but sadly never materialised. But I used to just generally fall asleep during the first half of every Serie A game, no matter who was playing.
Right.
And
You couldn't be roused even by Jimbo appearing at half time.
No, I was done by half time. Really sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Well, this will all be new to you then,
Yes.
because while you've been away,
Juventus are still champions.
yeah, Juventus went down, came back up, and are looking this season, James, to lift their 7th straight Scudetto. But as you mentioned, Milan have spent a lot of money and are expected to challenge. You've got some very exciting new faces. Benevento, the first appearance in the top flight for 88 years. Spal, first time since 67. Some big changes to the league. Christmas break is gone. What? There's probably going to be fewer goals because Joe Hart's back in London, but there are going to be more Champions League sides. All right. Here's Andy Follows, who says, is Serie A the most exciting open league in Europe? Milan, Inter, Roma, Juve and Napoli, all title contenders. Well, James Horncastle, we did a mini preview the other day. We've now had a full round of action. What did we learn?
Well, we learned that reports of Juventus's demise are perhaps overstated because they were very impressive against Cagliari, in particular Paulo Dybala, who's now wearing that number 10 shirt. He looks much more suitable in that shirt than, let's say, the likes of Paul Pogba and Carlos Tevez. I think he's a worthy heir to the likes of Platini, Baggio and Del Piero himself. He was magnificent. They won 3-0. It could have been a little bit more complicated. Gigi Buffon had to make a big penalty save when it was just 1-0.
Juve looking good then, although Cagliari. What about their rivals then? Napoli, who you've tipped previously, didn't spend a lot of money but have got Milik back.
They have, and he scored.
At the weekend.
Exactly. He rewarded the opportunity that he was given by Maurizio Sarri. But I think there's a lot of curiosity outside of Italy about the Milan clubs and whether this is the year that they actually come back, because Milan have spent upwards of 200 million on the squad. They've bought a completely new team, and they started very impressively the weekend. They beat Crotone 3-0, but Crotone reduced to 10 men early on in that game. But I think the kind of irony about Milan is that they've spent all this money, and the player who's kind of stolen the headlines, stolen the show this summer so far is a 19-year-old who's come through their academy called Patrick Cutrone, who won that penalty, scored a goal and set up another one for Suso.
A lot of excitement about him. They've not just spent a lot of money, but they've actually spent it well for once, which is certainly a novelty from Milan. Kalinic, the latest arrival from Fiorentina. Michael Power saying, should Milan fans be disappointed with his signing after previously the club being linked with Aubameyang, Morata and Belotti?
I don't think so. I think he's a player that they've had on standby pretty much throughout the transfer window, which makes him look like a kind of last resort. But yeah, he suits how Vincenzo Montella's sides play. He's good for 15 goals a season in Italy, which, considering 6 players got more than 20 last year, again kind of makes him look a little bit overwhelming. But he makes the players around him better. He's got the technique, I would say, of a number 10, which will probably come as a surprise to a lot of Blackburn fans. But he can play sort of no-look passes over the top for his teammates. And I think he'll knit that team together really well. And as you said, there does seem to have been a real good plan in recruitment. They wanted to sign players for a specific system, specific style, and they've essentially bought an entire new team to do that. But
right.
I think it'll be really interesting tonight when they play Skendia in the Europa League. Obviously,
what was the first leg?
6-0, but they're going to experiment with a 3-5-2 tonight. And they're going to play, obviously, Bonucci at the back.
Right.
He's used to that system. And it also allowed them to maybe play Kalinic and Silva up front, although I think Cutrone will keep his place tonight.
Right, if you haven't been keeping up with things at Milan, Adam, the Andre Silva coming in from Porto, midfielders, Frank Kessier from Atalanta looks outstanding, Hakan Çalhanoğlu out of Bayer Leverkusen. They've managed to keep hold of Donnarumma, as you mentioned last time you were on, James. The big news, though, is, I think the one that everyone was talking about was Leo Bonucci. Is he a game changer? Can we equate his move from Juve to Milan the same way that, say, Andrea Pirlo's journey the opposite direction proved in Juve's title potential thing. Is that a sentence? Answer it anyway.
Well, he brought that up himself and said that this is what he wants to emulate, and he wants to swing the power back. And I thought it was quite interesting. I mean, that was seen as a game-changing transfer in the landscape of Italian football, recent history. But I think it also tells you a lot about how Bonucci sees himself. I think he sees himself as a playmaker. I think Juventus will miss Bonucci the playmaker more than Bonucci the defender, even though he's obviously an outstanding defender.
But his distribution, absolutely
exactly. I mean,
unique among, I think, defenders, no?
Exactly. And I think that's one of the reasons why Juventus haven't looked to replace him, because you can't replace him. There aren't any other Bonuccis out there. But yeah, he clearly has a point to prove. He fell out with Massimiliano Allegri. He loves Juventus, but he fell out with the manager, and I think he wants to stick it to that manager. And I think having a player with that kind of drive, that kind of hunger, is always useful for a team that is going to make, in my opinion, a title push.
Wow. Are you hot for some Serie A action yet, Adam?
Well, in terms of Milan, it's a bit similar to Manchester United over here. It's this concept that the Premier League needs a good Manchester United, and from the outside, it seems quite similar for Serie A. After all this time, it needs a strong Milan side, regardless of how much money they spent and where that money's come from.
Right.
And this may not be a squad comparable to the mid '90s, but perhaps Serie A from the outside needs a big Milan.
Right. Well, in case you were thinking of watching a game this weekend, maybe James can tempt you into Roma-Inter, because that's a clash of two more of the title contenders, as well as being Luciano Spalletti up against his old club.
Exactly, going back to the Olimpico just 3 months after leaving, and he's set a very high bar for his successor, Eusebio Di Francesco, because Roma had statistically their best ever season last year. Okay, they didn't win anything, but they broke the points record, they scored more goals than they ever had, and they had the capocannoniere, Edin Dzeko, and that was down to Luciano Spalletti in his 18-month spell there. He did a very good job, which was kind of obfuscated by this kind of clash between him and Francesco Totti. Now he's at Inter, and they started the season very well with a very convincing 3-0 win against Fiorentina. They just so happen to have had quite a low-profile transfer window, a little bit like Roma, but they've signed the players that they needed. They've completed an incomplete team. And this is going to be a fascinating game on Saturday night.
Right. That win last weekend over Fiorentina, probably the most impressive result of round one of the season. Ian Piov saying, are Inter really going to be as good as they looked in that match, or was it just that Fiorentina were really bad?
Fiorentina fielded the youngest team in Serie A at the weekend. They've obviously lost a lot of their best players, two of whom have gone to Inter, Borja Valero and Mattias Vecino, but Bernardeschi's gone to Juve, Kalinic has gone to Milan, Gonzalo Rodriguez has gone back to Argentina, so it's going to be a big transition year for the Viola.
Okay, and Inter, they're Inter. We really don't know what to expect from them. What about Roma, where obviously Totti's left, Salah's gone to Liverpool, Rudiger to Chelsea.
Chesney's gone to Juventus.
They brought in Kolarov. There's some talk that Patrick Schick, one of our favourite players from Sampdoria, might go to the capital. Yeah. But by and large, it's a little bit underwhelming, I think, for Roma supporters after the arrival of Monchi, who was supposed to be the man who was going to transform their transfer fortunes.
Exactly, and I think one of the subplots to this game on Saturday night is that Roma and Inter are the teams in for Schick. But Monchi has had a slightly underwhelming window insofar that I think what he's done is he's added the depth that Roma lacked last year, which stopped them going deeper in other competitions like the Europa League and the Coppa Italia, where they were really disappointing. They've been after Riyad Mahrez all summer. It looks like Leicester are going to hold firm and they're not going to sell him to him. So they're having to completely change their plans. It looks like they might go in for Domenico Berardi, who Di Francesco knew. Sassuolo, he can play that role. But Berardi, for whatever reason, just doesn't seem to want to leave Sassuolo. Obviously, he could have gone to Juventus on a number of occasions and chose not to. But Roma had the most difficult game the weekend. They played against Atalanta, who finished fourth last year. They won 1-0. It was a very gutsy defensive performance. But their only goal came from their only shot on target, and that was from Kolarov, and it was a free kick. And they seem a bit clunky and mechanical in attack. And I think it's, unless they fill that Salah kind of shaped hole in their attack, I think it's going to be more difficult for them to stay in contention than it was, say, last year.
Right. Well, Saturday's Roma-Inter game should be illuminating then as to their chances and Inter's as well. Other matches this weekend include Adam Genoa's clash with Juventus, Milan up against Cagliari, Fiorentina taking on Samp, and Napoli, Atalanta. Andrew Paler says, what's the best city in Italy for a football weekend? A game or two, a bit of culture, food, and that, apart from Roma and Milan, because I've done that.
I'd either go to Florence or Genoa.
Really?
Yeah, and I'd love to catch a Genoa derby, a Derby della Lanterna, because you've got the Luigi Ferraris, which is like an English stadium. You're right on top of the pitch, and the choreographies in that game are magnificent.
Right.
So I would do that.
Florence, lovely town. Frankly, not necessarily the most atmospheric of.
No, and I think
stadium.
maybe this year, respecting the fact that they've signed Diego Simeone's son, Giovanni, maybe not the year to catch Fiorentina.
All right, then. And that really does bring us to the end of this Totally Football show. And many thanks to Mark Schwartzer, who's gone now, so we can say what we want about him. James, thanks to you.
Pleasure.
Bingo. Adam, lovely to see you.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
When's your new book out?
They need to find a new continent for it to come out in, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Super.
How many countries has it been sold in?
I get statistical analysis about these sort of things, but yeah, South Africa's an oddly popular place for it. Maybe they love their football cliches over there.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't? Anyway, many thanks to you, listener, for being with us. We're back on Monday to discuss all of that and think of things that we want to talk about in the always exciting international break. Have yourselves a great weekend in the meanwhile, and we'll see you then.
The Totally Football Show is a Muddy Knees Media production. For sales and advertising, please email sales@muddykneesmedia.com and tweet us @The Totally Show.